Good afternoon again. I'm Korosy, Florida Jay-Watch Coordinator and Important Bird Area Coordinator with Audubon, Florida. And Audubon, Florida is the state office of National Audubon Society. Let's see. So the Florida scrub jay is Florida's only endemic bird species, meaning the bird is found, Florida scrub jays are found nowhere else other than Florida. We have one endemic subspecies of bird in Florida, and that's the Florida grasshopper sparrow. But it's not a full species. Grasshopper sparrows occur many places throughout North America and Central America. So the jay is really special to us here in Florida. It is federally threatened. It was listed in 1987. And it remains listed and no real prognosis for delisting it. So a little bit about the biology of Florida scrub jays, which is important to the rest of my presentation. Florida scrub jays are non-migratory. They do not leave. They hatch. They live most of their lives, generally speaking, in a very close proximity to where they hatched. They don't disperse very far. Even as adults, or well, as juveniles, they don't disperse very far. 7 kilometers, I believe, is about the average, about the maximum distance, actually, that they do disperse. A few have been found farther than that from where they hatched, but not many. They're very territorial birds, more so during the breeding season. They become somewhat less territorial in late summer, when the juveniles are roaming around in gangs through the neighborhood. And when in the fall and early winter, when they're busy caching acorns in bare sand, they're so occupied with that, they don't really pay a lot of attention to the neighbors getting a little bit too close into their territory. Florida scrub jays are cooperative breeders. Each family has a core of a breeding pair, male and a female, and they can have up to 6 helper birds. Most often, those helper birds are offspring from previous years. Not always. Divorces do occur occasionally in family groups, and sometimes one of the mates dies and the bird is older and no longer breeding, and it's sort of kicked out or it wanders out of its territory and incorporates with another group. But generally speaking, the birds in a group of jays are related. It helps to have more helpers in your family group if you're a scrub jay. More birds in a group can defend a larger territory, and larger territory means more food resources for the group. Also, helper birds provide a very important function for scrub jays. More birds means there are more eyes watching for danger or invaders, watching for predators, but also the helper birds find food and they feed the nestlings and the just fledged young. So the more helper birds there are to find food, the more birds that are raised, the more successful number of offspring there are in families. So what you see over time is if you have a property that has pairs of jays, with no additional birds in those groups, you start to see the population on that property decline over time because they just have a tough time raising many young successfully without helpers. This is the current distribution of Florida scrub jays. There are generally the birds are along the coastal areas of Florida, both the Atlantic and the Gulf Coast. And this area here is the Lake Wales Ridge scrub. This area, this large core up here in the north part of the state is Ocala National Forest. This is a different type of scrub. Coastal scrub is slightly different in its composition than the Lake Wales Ridge scrub or the Ocala National Forest scrub. but it all has some common elements, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So I thought I'd give you the bad news first. Once upon a time, 39 counties in the state had scrub jays, thriving in them, but that's no longer the case. 9 counties no longer have any jays, and most of the remaining counties have less than 30 groups of jays in the entire county. There are only 9 counties now that have more than 30 groups in total on conservation lands. And that correlates pretty well with the previous slide. There are coastal populations in Sarasota and Manatee County. Ocala National Forest up here is a stronghold. Merritt Island, Brevard County is a stronghold, and the Lake Wales Ridge. There are still some jays along the southeast coast of Florida. They are unfortunately declining slowly, but a lot is being done to try and maintain some of those populations. So I'm going to show you this slide and the next one. This 2-slide sequence really tells the story of what's happened to Florida scrub in our state. 1943, what's outlined in red is what's now Lyonia Preserve. It is a Volusia County preserve, about half an hour's drive north of Orlando. So this is what the area looked like in 1943, and this is what it looks like now. So this is really frames habitat loss. Florida scrub is high and dry. Mitigation was never required to build on high dry land. So a lot of scrub land was converted to citrus and to other types of agriculture and to residential and commercial developments. It's nice, high dry, sandy land that's well drained. It's perfect for agricultural and commercial development. So you look at a piece of property like this, and I'll talk a little bit more about prescribed fire in a minute, but think about how you would burn this. You've got schools, college campus, community college campus on one side, a lot of residential areas. The site managers tell me that the only days that they can burn this property is when the smoke is going to go straight up. And how often does that happen? So what they have to do to maintain this land for scrub jays is to mow it. And that's the swaths that you see throughout. These are trails. They widen them. They mow periodically, change out areas that they're mowing, and do strictly mechanical habitat maintenance. So far it's working because it's packed with jays. This is about 700 acres, and there are about 30 to 35 scrub jay groups on this property. So habitat loss has plagued scrub. The other thing is fire suppression. Florida endured decades of fire suppression. I grew up with Smokey the Bear also. In overgrown habitat, the scrub oak that comprises much of this habitat gets too thick, too close together. It no longer has the open, bare sand spots that the jays need to bury their acorns in, that they eat in the winter and feed to their young the following spring if there aren't enough insects. And also the sand pines grow very tall. They shade out the scrub. They'll drop needle duff. It also covers the sand, basically shades out the scrub oaks, and as a result, the jays leave. And a lot of other organisms leave too. So this is what optimal jay habitat looks like. 1 or 2 trees per acre, maybe. There's a lot of discussion continuing about that. The oak shrubs about my height, 4 to 6 feet high, because the birds nest about 5 feet off the ground, roughly. in those more dense oaks. What they must have are bare, sandy patches. The jays, an individual jay can bury or cache 6,000 to 8,000 acorns a year. That's per bird. And the statistic is that they can remember where about 80% of those are. I have watched birds come in and land and go right over to an exact spot in the sand and with one swipe pull out an acorn. It's really remarkable. So the habitat has got to be maintained that way. Historically, as many of you know, Florida is one of the lightning capitals of the U.S. Lightning-ignited fires were the way that this type of habitat, scrub, was naturally maintained. And that also maintained many of the other ecosystems we know and love in Florida, like dry prairie and pine flatwoods, longleaf pine. They were all burned by fire, broad areas, but patchy fires. So what do we do now? In order to restore habitat that's overgrown, many times it's got to be mechanically thinned. And that's to diminish the risk of wildfire, especially in areas where there are urban interfaces. So there's a mechanical treatment component. Also, there's a mechanical treatment component for urban preserves that's pretty much required. It's mandatory. Mechanical restoration then precedes the initiation of prescribed fire cycling. So there's a wide, you see 5 to 20 year fire rotations. I've talked with people from FWC about this. And the 20-year rotation is because of the fact that Florida rosemary does not set seed but every 15 years. So, and there's so little fuel because the rosemary has a allelopathic substance in it that kills everything around it. There's little fuel on the ground and it won't burn anyway. So there's a wide fire rotation over time. The wisdom is that you need to vary the fire rotation intervals. In other words, don't burn every 5 years on the dot. Vary that. Maybe it's 5 years this time, it's 8 years next time, 10 or 12, 6, whatever. Jays will not re-inhabit burned habitat usually until about 3 to 4 years post-burn, which is when there's an adequate oak mast crop. So they've got to have the acorns or they can't move back in to that area and reoccupy. So how does the Jay Watch program get involved with scrub jays and habitat restoration? This is a program that was started in partnership between Archbold Biological Station and the Nature Conservancy in 2002. The Nature Conservancy had to step out of leadership with the program in 2010, and they handed off to FWC for 2011, and then FWC handed off the baton again to Audubon in 2012. And there we are, and we hope to keep the program for a very long time. So how does Jay Watch help scrub jays and help habitat restoration? We're able, with this program, a very broad-based citizen science program, to survey many preserves where the staffing is inadequate or the preserves are too remote from staff to be able to survey them. So these are properties that would not otherwise be surveyed. We use consistent methods statewide, and that enables us to compare population trends statewide. And then we use this data, and I'll show you how we do that, to determine the success, to help evaluate success from past management activities as well as to plan future management activities. And we also, with our trainings, create more citizen advocates for prescribed fire and for scrub jays. We have people who attend our trainings and never do a survey, and that's okay, because we know that they have walked out of the door and they've learned something. And they'll take that out and tell their friends and families. So more than 40 publicly managed and a few private managed sites use Jay-Watch survey methods across the state now. That number varies, sometimes as high as 50 or 60. We pick up a few properties that are surveyed for a few years for different reasons, and then they drop out. We also have another 30 sites or so, 30 or 40, that contribute data to our database, so we have a large database that's maintained on a multi-year basis. It's very much a partnership program with local governments, nonprofits, state and federal agencies. We have many, many partners. So we have a rather rigorous survey protocol that was developed with the input of primarily Reed Bowman from Archbold Biological Station, who continues to be our science coordinator with Jay-Watch. And it relies heavily on the fact that in a window of time each summer, the adult and juvenile scrub jays are readily distinguishable from each other by plumage. And we can teach people to readily recognize, to identify juveniles and count the number of adults and juveniles in each group of jays. We teach people how to identify, these birds are in this group and these birds are in this other group. And volunteers map where they found the jays relative to survey points. We have a survey network set up on the site, on each site, and they go out and map the birds. So juvenile, often called brown heads, because they have a solid brown all the way from the head down, and the adults have a gray patch that's readily distinguishable even in poor lighting. You can see the break between the dark back of the head and the pale upper back of the adults. So we do the surveys at the hottest time of the year, which is not a lot of fun, but at this time of year, the juveniles are old enough to be out of the nest tree and visible, but they're not so old that they're roaming around the property in packs of teenagers, like we all used to do. So we try and target to this very narrow window when we can tell the adults and juveniles apart, but we can also tell where they came from, which group the juveniles came from, and map them appropriately. Then we can determine breeding success for each group, so you get an aerial pattern, a spatial pattern of breeding success on each property. So there are standardized forms, like for many surveys, standardized survey forms, and each volunteer team is provided with a map with the survey point, locations, and they map behavior. They map the location of the jays. They map the flight directions. Did the jays, come towards you from the northwest, and then when they left, they flew to the east? All of this information helps us determine which jays belong to which group. So with that data in hand, when that survey comes in, and there are 3 surveys, so every survey point is visited 3 times in that month-long window. So either the site manager will analyze the data or I'll do it, and we prepare GIS-based maps. This is the number of adults and number of juveniles, and this is the approximate use area. We're not really delineating territories because the territory is larger than those polygons you see. They're actual territory. We just map them relative to each other. Okay. So the example here is that this group of points over here and this group of points over here represent survey points that are unoccupied. Well, a site manager can take this map and say, okay, there aren't any jays over here. Yes, it's overgrown. I'm going to go in and I'm going to burn this area, and I'm going to burn this area. 3 to 4 years later, that will be occupiable by scrub jays. So then I, as the land manager, can now go in and burn this area, let's say, and this area, and the jays will have somewhere to go. They'll be able to move while I burn the habitat where they are now, because it's going to become overgrown. And then, we continue cycling like that. So these maps are really helpful in terms of planning land management actions. And I think this is my last slide. An area where Jay-Watch is getting involved is more directly in habitat restoration now. We are moving into the area of using volunteers, not only Jay-Watch volunteers, but we recently partnered with the Florida Trail Association. They have chainsaw crews. Yay! They have people that love to cut down sand pines. So this actually, this work here was actually a corporate program we did. The people in the red shirts were Wells Fargo Bank. They have a green team in their Orlando office, and they sent us 20 able-bodied people, and we went out to Lyonia Preserve, the one in Volusia County that can't be burned. And in a half day, we lopped with hand loppers over 3,000 sand pine saplings. They did a really super job. And then this one here, this was a Swiftmud Preserve in Manatee County. We had the chainsaw crew and about a half dozen other Jay-Watch and Florida Trail volunteers, and we were able to remove sand pines from 10.7 acres. That in half a day. Really a good project. It's a different way to involve people. So we've secured some funding to move forward and do more of this kind of program. So we'll have, multiple opportunities to involve people. So I know I've talked with at least one person here who might be interested in Jay-Watch, and I know there's one Jay-Watch volunteer involved. And if anyone might be interested, we'd be happy to have them. We have trainings in late spring each year, and then the surveys in mid-June to mid-July. That's it. The closest, there are jays in Charlotte County. The county has staff that I think monitor some of those properties. I mean, there are some county preserves, but I don't know specifically about Northport. Sarasota County. Northport is in Sarasota County. Sorry about that. Lemon Bay Preserve is the closest place I know of that has scrub jays to Northport.